Colleagues, we're down to our last three. AB 117, our state administration trailer bill.
That's what we just say, like, I would like to go back.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And everything is always a different.
Clients can afford the fees.
Yeah, no, but seriously, there's always a different reason.
We're very independent over here.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's giving me something to pay attention to.
Are we done?
Yeah, we have two more.
There's nothing interesting on your side.
AB 117,
Predictable.
state administration. Colleagues, focus please. Thank you. Ms. Bosler.
Yeah, this bill has two provisions. The first is keyed in appropriation, which is why it is in a separate bill. But this one is really a very technical issue related to the California Health Facility Construction Loan Insurance Program, the Cal Mortgage Program is for short. And this really just clarifies that debentures, which is a type of debt instrument backed only by general creditworthiness and reputation of the issuer. These amendments basically ensure that the monies that support this financing program are continuously appropriated without regard to fiscal year, and it just makes that clarification, which is very important for the bond attorneys and those people that are working on this program. The second item in this bill does make a small change to AB 900, which is a CEQA streamlining effort that was implemented several years ago now, and this just extends by 1 year the amount of time that local agencies have to approve those projects that have already been identified.
Right,
to be eligible for the process.
Thank you, Ms. Bosler. Colleagues, I'm going to touch just briefly on the second item that Ms. Bosler described. It does have an impact on a project in my district, so I want to be very forthright and transparent about this. So you may remember that it was Assemblywoman Buchanan who in 2011 authored a bill that we passed, which is known as AB 900. It gave the authority to the governor to be able to determine that a large project, meaning over $100 million, qualifies as an environmental leadership project. To qualify, it has to be of that size or greater, has to promote environmental sustainability, transportation efficiency, greenhouse gas reduction, and job creation. It has to specifically mitigate 100% of all its greenhouse gas emissions. There is no CEQA exemption or shortcutting. It just, with regard to any legal challenge that the project might have through the CEQA process, that it be adjudicated within 270 days. And so we want to incentivize large projects to be as green as possible. If they qualify, they get this streamlining relative to the judicial process and review. So this change in date does not open the doors for any additional projects to qualify as environmental leadership projects. What it does do is for those that have already been determined to be AB 900 compliant, though may not, because of their own timeline of their projects, be able to get their EIR certified by the end of 2015, which is the date in the current AB 900 law, to be able to have the calendar year of 2016 to complete their EIR certification. That's all this does, and there are specifically two projects that have already been deemed environmental leadership projects, one in my district, which is the Warriors Arena project, as well as a mixed-use retail, commercial, and residential project on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. So I just want to be real clear as to what this change does, and it's as I just described. Senator Morlock.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. What does this have to do with the budget? What's the connection?
This is specific to two projects, and the question is...
Are they state projects? Are they like, is it a state? Or are we spending money on the projects, or these?
The state will benefit from each of these projects.
Okay, so it's a potential revenue?
It both is, these projects are job creators,
Right.
and there will be additional tax revenues to the state as a result of these projects completing.
Why don't we just do this as a regular bill? This doesn't...
Quite honestly, it has to do with timelines. And the date change is relative to the timelines. We have a motion by Senator Roth. Any public comment? Please step forward. Mr. Jones.
Kyle Jones with Sierra Club, California. We opposed AB 900 in the past, and we are opposed to this measure here. We're not a fan of anything going along with CEQA, and especially that streamlines it in any way, especially in a trailer bill process. We think it doesn't provide enough time to really flesh out what's happening here. And we think what this does is it puts CEQA in a negative light that just kind of fuels ammo for people to continually to attack it, to put forward further exemptions and streamlining packages that we see year after year that have the potential to do real damage to the environment. And for those reasons, we oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. Some of the strongest supporters of the California Environmental Quality Act. We also were part of AB 900 process, very strongly support this bill. I want to congratulate the Warriors on their win. And you're exactly right about the job creation aspects now. The construction industry has been hit by some of the hardest unemployment numbers in the past 5 years. And yet the Bay Area is booming with some opportunities here. Opportunities that attract construction workers from all over, including the Central Valley. So this is a huge revenue base for not only San Francisco and the Bay Area, but also for workers that actually come from the Bay Area for actually those jobs and take that revenue back to the Central Valley and spend it on keeping their homes, buying their children something to eat, going out to restaurants. All that circulates back into the economy. AB 900 was a great process. We believe in it. It looks at leadership projects. It protects the environment and also encourages good quality job creation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. So just a final comment. This is not expanding AB 900 in any way whatsoever. AB 900 is law. There are 2 projects specifically that are already deemed environmental leadership projects. Without this slight change, because these projects have not had the opportunity to complete their EIR certification, no CEQA corner will be cut here whatsoever. The projects would not move forward. So for that reason, this change has been proposed. We do have a motion. Call the roll, please.
Leno?
Aye.
Leno, I. Nielsen?
Aye.
Nielsen, I. Allen? Allen, I. Anderson?
No.
Anderson, no. Bell? Bell, I. Block? Block, I. Hancock? Hancock, I. Mitchell? Monning? Morlock?
No.
Morlock, no. Wynn? Wynn, no. Pan?
Aye.
Pan, I. Pavley? Pavley, I. Roth? Roth, I. Stone? Stone, no. Wolk? Wolk, I.
Could you please call the absent member?
Monning? Monning, I.
– 11-4 is the vote. And one moment, please. The final vote is 11-4. The measure passes. Down to our last 2, colleagues. AB 124 is our state employment trailer bill.
Yes, this bill, the main provision of this bill is just the codification of the retiree health care pre-funding framework that the administration is currently pursuing through the collective bargaining process. This bill, just to be very clear, does not include any of the administration's proposed high deductible health plan and related health savings account recommendations. Those are not included here. I also, the other provision of the bill is to repeal the Government Code 12439, which authorizes the state controller to abolish state positions remaining vacant for 6 consecutive months. There's been a lot of discussion about this over the last 6 months or so, and in the May revision, the administration did propose to eliminate this provision and instead replace it with a every 2-year true-up process where we will rebase and understand provide more transparency about how much money is being spent on OE&E or operating expenses and equipment, and then also personnel services. There has been some audits that have come to light that have showed that this provision of law is not meeting its intended purpose, which is to, because of the way we do budgeting, and it is really causing a lot of unneeded and unnecessary paperwork, and really that obscure the transparency. So I think our proposal takes budgeting a step even further in transparency by requiring the true up every other year to ensure that everyone understands what's being spent on positions and then what's being spent on other expenses that state departments have.
Thank you, Ms. Bosler.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Nielsen.
Mr. Chairman and members, here again we are rewarding the bureaucracy for obstinance. This provision was put in to stop the gaming of the system. It didn't work because it wasn't enforced, and the agencies simply resisted it or divined the game of, in terms of losing positions, they'd move someone else around in positions to keep them so-called filled in the requisite order of time. Bureaucracy has won. The people of California, again, have lost. We have not fixed the problem. We haven't even put a Band-Aid on it. And with the kind of reporting that will be required here has no teeth in it whatsoever. And as we can see, even when there were teeth in it, if the enforcers don't enforce, the teeth mean nothing. So it is a toothless threat. Bureaucracy still rules. And this is an area of egregious harm. About 5 years ago, we had two departments that redirected $300 million that the legislature had appropriated for specific purposes. They redirected it for their own purposes, and then when we pushed back in the Legislative Budget Committee, they went to the, the State Board of Control, I guess, and they got that authorized through the Board of Control. 5 people. Not even come back to the legislature. There is an inexhaustible ability of the agencies of government to game the system. And here, yet again, we let them get away with it.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In Orange County, 8 years ago, we negotiated retiree medical. And there we have the privilege of doing it as 5 supervisors working with our bargaining units as opposed to here just waiting and watching the governor. But we were able to negotiate terms that modified the retiree medical and took our unfunded liability of $1.4 billion down to $412 million. So we reduced it by 71%. It was very collaborative, and in fact, the unions are still bragging about how they were able to collaborate and work with us on it. If we could reduce the unfunded liability for the state 71%, you would reduce your wall of debt by $50 billion here at the state. And what I'm seeing in this bill doesn't give the governor enough tools, doesn't really do what needs to be done like we did in Orange County. I extend my offer to help the governor, or if you want to go through our plan or what we've done, I'm happy to jump in and assist, because there's a lot we could do here. So I'm disappointed that this doesn't provide him enough tools. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Morlock. Ms. Bosler, if you want to respond.
Just that we do continue to work through collective bargaining on a pre-funding strategy that is a shared responsibility between the state and the employee for those retiree health costs. We do think that pre-funding absolutely, as your experience showed, you in Orange County will have a significant effect on being able to reduce the state's liabilities. And that's why we continue to work on that at the bargaining table.
Thank you. Senator Roth.
Well, just a comment, Mr. Chair. Ma'am, I assume the governor's not shy, so I assume that if the governor needs more tools to work with in reducing the unfunded liability, administration will let us know. Is that correct?
We did have a larger proposal in January. We will continue to work on this. It is the last piece of really the unfunded liabilities that the state has not addressed. And so if things don't go as planned, it makes sense that we would be continuing to talk about it because it is one of our significant unfunded liabilities that we haven't addressed yet.
Thank you, Ms. Bosler. Thank you, Senator Roth. Any other questions from the committee? Any public comment? Don't see any. We have a motion by Senator Roth. Call the roll, please.
Leno?
Aye.
Leno, I. Nielsen?
No.
Nielsen, no. Allen? Allen, I. Anderson?
No.
Anderson, no. Bell? Bell, I. Block? Block, I. Hancock? Hancock, I. Mitchell? Monning? Monning, I. Morlock? Morlock, no. Wynn? Wynn, no. Pan? Pan, I. Pavley? Pavley, I. Roth? Roth, I. Stone? Stone, no. Wolk? Wolk, I.
The vote is 10-5. Measure passes. Saving the best for last, we're moving on to AB 115, which is our drought trailer bill.
Yeah, what's up?
Ms. Bosler.
Yes, this bill, AB 115 that's before you, is an extraordinary bill related to the state's response to this unprecedented drought that California is facing. We're in the fourth year of a very difficult drought, and by this time, I'm sure everyone has seen a lot of brown lawns in their neighborhood. There are many sacrifices up and down the state of California this summer due to the severe shortage of water here in California. This bill has several provisions, all of which the administration believes are necessary for us to move through this drought, but also to deal with emergency response right now in the summer, but also really to build a much more resilient infrastructure going forward. First, this bill expands the local authority to enforce water conservation ordinances. It also provides opportunities for adequate water supplies to disadvantaged communities through a provision of the bill that I know we'll have a significant discussion about related to the consolidation of water systems. Specifically, this bill is very targeted to disadvantaged communities and about 200 communities statewide that would be impacted. This also improves the state's ability to measure water diversions by improving the monitoring and reporting to the state. And then finally, there is an effort to streamline the implementation of a slim set of water recycling projects that are also important to saving water and, again, improving the resiliency of the state's water supply system. I'm happy to take any questions, and I also have colleagues here from the State Water Board to also help answer any questions, given the complexity of these proposals.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Ms. Bosler. I'm going to start off. I'm sure many of my colleagues have some questions and comments. Well, actually, let Senator Wolk introduce the conversation. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to begin by saying the obvious, which is that we are in extraordinary drought, and we need to step up and do as much as we possibly can to assure that we use each drop of water as carefully and as wisely as we must. The proposals in here are reasonable ones, and they are absolutely necessary. So I think we should, I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you want to go through each one. They focus on measurement, and penalties when conservation levels are not reached. They focus on areas of the state, in particular with respect to consolidation, where we have serious problem with the institutional structure to allow us to solve the problem of very poor quality or no drinking water. That is an embarrassment to the state. We need to fix that. Monies are set aside in the bond to help with consolidation, and there are protections in here, liability releases that are important to the host unit. When it comes to the CEQA exemption, I think it is narrowly drawn, it is focused, and I think, and I'm very comfortable with supporting that. This is a thoughtful package, a necessary package, and it's time to be about it. So I would urge my colleagues to support 115. It's time to move it forward.
Thank you, Senator Wolk. Senator Pavley, was your hand up?
Yes, it was, and I just thought I'd say one or two comments. But first of all, it's interesting, my staff had given me today, they keep tabulation of how many household well failures occur each week. Well, in Tulare County, they're now up to 33 new household well failures for a total of 1,281. It's been a dramatic increase of 33% from the last report. Even in districts where you wouldn't think, in Southern California, if they're not tied into the state water project, we're seeing communities now with no access. If they rely on well water, they can't reach them. In some counties, supervisors are continuing to grant permits to allow people to drill deeper and deeper wells. So you're going to see this number increase as the amount of water in the groundwater basins dries up. And so with that sort of background, I will be supporting this package today, but I thought since quite a few people asked me about the CEQA exemptions, I just briefly articulate, I support the measures in here on increasing the accountability and monitoring, obviously. But the first CEQA exemption is recycled water. It was broader. It was a lot broader when originally proposed. It's really narrowed down, and it relates to a relatively short time period when the governors declared a drought emergency. It's only on construction or expansion of recycled water pipelines and directly related infrastructure within existing right-of-ways, and, not or, and directly related to groundwater replenishment. It doesn't affect any environmental issues like wetlands or sensitive habitat, et cetera. This exemption expires when the governor decides there is not a drought anymore, or by January 2017, whichever comes first. The second, one CEQA exemption is really de minimis, and that's relating to plumbing. But the third CEQA exemption is an important one. And when I first looked at that, my eyes, I was not sure exactly what I was reading. But it's actually a tool for local governments. If they wanted to put a moratorium on constructing new wells, because they think that's in the best interest of their sustainability of the groundwater basin and they're concerned about saltwater intrusion, we're saying they don't have to go through CEQA to do that, to manage their water supply. And so this is not building projects that we traditionally use CEQA. This is really, in my opinion, was potentially a delaying tool by people who don't want the local governments to manage their groundwater basins. So I will be supporting all three of these measures and the entire drought package.
Thank you, Senator Pavley. Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In 2011, Orange County was the victim of a trailer bill with SB 89. So I'm kind of sensitive here, and I don't want to sound agitated, Mr. Chair, because I love you. But I'm having a tough time reconciling how is this a budget bill and If it creates jobs, just tell me, but I'm just not, I'm not getting the connection. Why can't we do this as a regular bill and have a good time with it that way?
I am going to allow the Department of Finance to respond to your question because this is their proposal, not mine. And what I can tell you is, in a perfect world, yes. I think what you'll hear from Ms. Bosler and her team is that because of the ever-increasing severity of the drought, and I would shortcut myself and say, well, we had a drought bill earlier. The drought is not news. We had bills introduced in January, but I will let the administration speak for herself.
Yeah, so these components were broadly proposed in the May revision, and I think the timeliness is really why they're being moved with the budget process. Legislation that goes into effect with the budget process will go into effect immediately, and there are benefits that can accrue immediately by many of these changes, especially the first provision that I discussed in terms of expanding local authority to enforce water conservation ordinances. We're really in a very unprecedented place where there is mandatory water conservation targets for every water district in the state, and those locals really need a panoply of tools to help to implement and enforce those actions in order to meet the targets. And so that is something that really would benefit, the state would benefit from having in place as soon as possible, as we're already into the very dry and hot summer months when these conservation measures are most important.
And an urgency bill wouldn't do that.
A 2/3 vote urgency bill would also do that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Morlock. Ms. Bosler, I have a few questions with regard to the consolidation of water districts component of the trailer bill. And I have some of the same concerns as Senator Morlock with regard to the speed of this, but I do understand the necessity given the severity of the drought. But I have to ask a couple questions. On page 8, first of all, we have some definitions which are important here. Disadvantaged community is defined as meaning a disadvantaged community that is in an unincorporated area or is served by a mutual water company, so that is specific. But further down the page, we have lines 36, 37, 38, where a public water system or a state's small water system within a disadvantaged community consistently fails to provide an adequate supply of safe drinking water. The State Water Resources Control Board may order consolidation with a receiving water system as provided in the section. It's not clear to me if the bill applies just to water wholesalers or just to retailers, and whether the intent of the bill only applies to the consolidation of two retail water systems or the forcing of water agencies to take a new wholesale customer. Can you respond to that, please?
The definition of the receiving water system refers to a public water system, and that is a system that delivers water to customers. So it would apply to
the
retail. No,
retailers.
It would apply to the retail. It is possible, of course, that there are entities that are both wholesalers and retailers, and so it would apply to them because of the fact that they are a retailer, but it's aimed at retailers.
So this has nothing to do with new wholesale customers for wholesalers like the San Francisco PUC?
That's correct.
Okay. And then also, the language of the bill says that the board can order consolidation when a system, quote, consistently fails to provide an adequate supply of safe drinking water. So the definition of consistently fails is a failure to provide an adequate supply of safe drinking water. Is this opening the door to a single incident to constitute consistent failure of, it appears that this opens that door.
We certainly would not use it in that manner. And in fact, the bill itself requires that the consolidation or extension of service, we have to demonstrate that that's the most effective and cost-effective means of providing an adequate supply of safe drinking water. And so if there's simple solutions at hand, if it's a single violation and there are simple solutions at hand that could be dealt with short of consolidation, we would certainly pursue those. We really view consolidation as really a last resort. We currently provide extensive technical assistance, financial assistance to communities to help them resolve their drinking water issues. If there are other options available, we'll certainly pursue those first. And again, pursuant to the language, we would have to show that it's both the most effective and cost-effective means of addressing the issue. I'd also note that the language requires the state to have to pay for the costs of completing the consolidation or the extension. There are the funding for doing this is limited. I mean, thankfully the voters passed Proposition 1, but the funding is very limited. We would really target it at those that are the most serious cases.
So I do get that the state will pay for the costs of infrastructural improvements through the bond funds, that there also be some indemnification for any liabilities that would come along with the consolidation. I get all of that. But I do want to ask you just a little bit further, the standard that is going to be met to measure consistent failure, it sounds more than a little subjective at this point. Is there anything more specific that you can add?